Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. Are very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come here, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. There's not any DCEU related news today, so today is Saturday. We're going to relax and talk about Superman, but not just within the DCEU. As you can see behind me, I've got my Superman's Return DVD in. God, I love that picture. That's a stunning picture of Brandon Routh as Superman, right? So yeah, yesterday, Superman Returns had its 13th anniversary. How amazing is that? Now, who watches Krypton, starring Cameron Cuffe as Superman's grandfather when he was a young man? So Cameron Cuffe, you may not know this, is a massive Superman fan and comic book fan. And he knows everything, right? He's not a bullshitter. He's absolutely on the money. And his favourite character is Superman. So he's saying in an article, right, that Superman is better than Batman. Wow, brave man. I mean, I've been saying that for years. But when you're famous and you do that on social media, you are going to get so much shit, Cam. So should we read the article, right? Now, he's a big fan of Tom Taylor's work, as am I, in the graphic novels. And this is what Cam has to say. Cameron Cuffe's Superman is better than Batman for one hopeful reason. Take it from Superman's grandpa. Right. When Cameron Cuffe walks into a comic book store, there's one aisle he zooms too fast. Too faster than a speeding bullet. Superman's. It's been a habit long before he played the Man of Steel's grandfather on TV. Although bookstores arrange aisles alphabetically by title, comics are usually named after lead heroes. The 26-year-old star of sci-fi's Krypton finds a little poetry in the proximity of Green Arrow and Green Lantern. A lot of comics are arranged with characters near each other. Cuffe tells me it's all about relationships. I met Cuffe during a Tuesday afternoon downpour in Manhattan at Midtown Comics near Grand Central Station. He's wearing horn-rimmed glasses that rest on his head of lush dark hair parted to the right. He talks up his favourite writers, Jeff Johns, Mark Waid and Tom Taylor. You can't get better comic book writers than that, right? And it's as if they're close friends, exhibiting the parasocial relationship of a fan. He gets Superman, he says of Taylor. Only someone who gets Superman can write injustice. As Cuffe delves into the nuances of DC Comics graphic novels like Kingdom Come and Birthright, wow, great titles, it becomes almost unfair how much he pulls off Clark Kent. Cuffe's passion for Superman, born in 1938 from Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, runs deeper than the depths of the Phantom Zone. Raised to cartoons but falls by comics. Cameron Cuffe believes superhero universes are places of awesome wonder and a worthy providing ground for one's moral compass. In the DC universe, truth and justice aren't old-fashioned. There are radical ideals to strive toward. Actually makes me tear duct just thinking about it. Cuffe isn't delusional. He knows Superman is a work of fiction, even if it's one of the best fictional franchises in American history. It still doesn't mean Superman will swoop down and save us from disaster. Cuffe wants to believe that Superman can be real through everyday kindness. Agreed. To prove it, the actor hopes to use his budding celebrity as a force for good, as a mental health advocate. Yeah, total respect for this because I'm also a mental health advocate and I do work with a lot of young men suffering with depression. I don't know if I've mentioned that before. I try to be as open and honest about my mental health as I possibly can be, he says. I want to get more involved in charities that increase aid, especially for those who can't afford their own. I suffer from anxiety and depression. Well, I didn't know that. And that doesn't make me any less of a human being. It doesn't make me unable to do the things I love, he adds. I always found people sharing their stories makes me feel less alone. Wow, this is just brilliant. Just absolutely brilliant. And there's more to this interview, right? So let's see. I spent an afternoon talking comics with him, and it's obvious Cuffe's passion for Superman isn't in the power fantasy of bending steel, but an ambitious quest for peace. He shows me his phone's wallpaper. It's the final fifth panel of Paging All-Star Superman. God, I'm getting so emotional. By Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. In it, Superman comforts a suicidal teenager about to jump by telling her that you're much stronger than you think you are. Sorry, this is emotional. No one will ever see me as Batman. It's such a beautiful moment, he says. No one will ever see me as Batman. I'm not the guardian protector of the night, but I can do that for someone. Any of us can. Show someone there is hope. We can believe in the best of them. After 2 decades idolising Superman, Cuffe is a fan whose ascendant in his role as Superman's grandfather, Seg-El, on the sci-fi series Krypton, set decades before Superman or Kal-El crash lands into Kansas Farmville. Krypton follows Seg-El's last-ditch efforts to save his planet. He is constantly challenged by Krypton's narrow-minded leaders who refuse to acknowledge their inevitable doom. Season 2 of Krypton premiered on June the 12th. Professionally, Cuffe plays Superman's grandfather, but personally, Cuffe aspires to be just like his hero. To this day, when I'm in a tricky situation, I ask, what would Superman do? God, I'm so emotional. He tells inverse people say Superman isn't relatable. I think he's the most relatable. God, this lad's saying everything I've ever said. This is fucking beautiful. This is how much I love Superman and how much he's meant for me all my life when I felt alone. This is brilliant. Everyone in their life will have an opportunity to be Superman, probably more than once. The importance of Superman is that you can take that opportunity. Born and raised in London with the West End right on his doorstep, Cuffe grew up the middle child in a household that fostered his early interest in theatre. He pursued the arts of the encouragement of his father, who dreamed of working in Hollywood. My dad grew up in a blue-collar family in Boston. He wanted to be a film producer, and it was never a reality for him. He encouraged us to follow our dreams. Wow, wish I had a dad like that. In performing, Cuffe found an outlet, didn't even know he needed. I'm quite an introverted person, he says. I never felt like I fit in anywhere. Tell me about it. I was quite lonely. I was lucky I discovered acting when I was a kid. That really helped me escape my own head. I was allowed to pretend. Cuffe was born in the 1990s, a decade he considers the golden age for kids' TV, when X-Men, Spider-Man and Power Rangers ruled the airwaves. Bruce Tiff's Superman the Animated Series was his favourite show. And of course there was Batman, Batman Beyond and Justice League. He reminisces. That's one of the first examples of a shared universe on television. That's true. Everything happening in cinemas now, it started there, in the modern era. Besides the cartoons and movies, Cuffe also loved the comics. Up, Down, Midtown Comics. Cuffe takes me on his life story as told by Superman. Jeff Loeb wrote, the first single issue I bought, the Public Enemies run of Superman Batman, he says. When Cuffe first arrived in New York as an adult, he worked as a production assistant for a $1.80 a week. He killed time between these very same shelves. I couldn't afford lunch, but every break I would go to Midtown Comics. Even if I didn't have the money, I would flip through the books and talk to the guys about what's coming out. He spots a favourite on the shelf, Superman for All Seasons. Wow. Another Superman story by Loeb and the artist Tim Sale. The comic aesthetically evokes Norman Rockwell's 20th century America. As Cuffe thumbs through it, he's rendered speechless at the pages of a boyish Clark Kent sipping pop soda with Lana Lang in a dinner. A few pages after that, Superman soars, soaked in the glow of the metropolis sunrise. Cuffe grew up in London, a far cry from a place like Smallville. Just what does a Brit see in truth, justice and the American way? Great question, and also a great comic, he says, laughing to himself. Real quick, Google Action Comics 775. There's nothing old-fashioned about being good and decent. The way I don't know why I'm so emotional, I just am. The way I thought about the American way was freedom happening and the pursuit of justice, making sure other people have the right to pursue is no matter who they are. Cuffe honoured his stagecraft in the UK at the Ler National Academy of Dramatic Art in Dublin before performing for Park Theatre in Damar Warehouse in London. A British theatre critic reviewing a 2014 production of City Angels, where Cuffe played Pretty Boy, Peter Kingsley, raved that he can act very convincingly, one to watch. Aside from a bit part in 2016 Meryl Streep film Florence Foster Jenkins, it was hard to watch Cuffe anywhere. I was in a big battle with rejections, he says. Every day was a struggle until one day something clicked. He found himself at a screening of Eddie the Eagle with star Hugh Jackman in attendance. Non-Brits may be unfamiliar with Skyer Michael Edwards, upon from the film, is based, but he was a pop hero in Cuff's homeland. He was terrible, but he was so enthusiastic, so happy to be at the Olympics. He didn't care how he did. I remember Eddie the Eagle, a wonderful man. It was here that Superman's world would-be grandfather heard wise words from Wolverine. Hugh Jackman, before the screening, said this story is important because we live in a society that too often celebrates winners. Very true. As opposed to people who play for the love of the game, the sentiment hit Cuff like a locomotive. Here he was, so concerned with trying to win that he forgot how to play. Everything you do, try to find the love in it, Cuff advises. What happens will happen. Months later, an email came from his agent. It was a casting call for Krypton, a new prequel series set on Superman's home world. Cuff decided he would give it a shot, but would be happy to just be a fan and binge the show from his living room. He had a good situation, but he didn't get it. He had a good audition, I can't bloody read. You know, because I'm crying, it's all blurred. But he didn't get it. The producers tested him again, and only to pass on him again, and then again and again. This process will repeat itself until Cuff's skeptical at yet another tryout wound up in Los Angeles before producer David Goyer. After one more test, he got the part. He was now officially Superman's grandfather. Weeks later, Cuff was standing before the camera as Seg-El, a roughneck Kryptonian, forced to watch his parents' executions. In the final scene of the Krypton pilot, Seg-El stands atop a stone floor, emblazoned with the iconic shield, the coat of arms of the House of El. He's holding the red cape of his grandson Superman, gifted to him by a time traveller named Adam Strange. While it was an important moment for Seg-El, because he's the last son of the El, the responsibility to carry his name, it meant something more to Cuff, as it would to me. I felt it was our time, he says. The beautiful thing about comics books is that the story continues, and the responsibility of our storyteller's future is to leave it better than we found it. To be part of that is such a huge honour. I'm really excited about Krypton Season 2, Cuff says. After a year of television in the books for me, Season 2 is the story I've always wanted to tell in this world. Last year we did the hard work for introducing the world. This year we really take an even deeper dive. We have a bit more fun with it, though Krypton is bringing more aspects of Superman's comic book to life. Cuff says Krypton will never be a traditional superhero story. That may be a relief for anyone weary at the high volume of comic book superhero adaptations out there today. We're not weary. Our stories take more inspiration from Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica, not The Flash, Cuff says. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. It's not about putting on a mask and fighting crime. It's about the society these people live in. Great science fiction isn't about robots or aliens or monsters. It's about us. It's about how people relate to each other in that sense. Krypton is very science fiction. Krypton hasn't forgotten its roots. Season 2 introduces Lobo, played by Emmett Scanlon, an oversized brute who speeds across the cosmos on a rocket-powered Harley-Davidson. Lobo first appeared in DC's Omega Men in 1983, but was reimagined later as a parody of dark and gritty anti-heroes who were in vogue with comics at the time. Lobo has long been a fan favourite. We wanted to embrace our comic book roots, says Cuff. Lobo is one of the most wild, fun characters out there. As fans, we know Lobo is shades of grey character. He's utterly self-interested. Whatever aligns with Lobo's interests, that's the way he's going to go. Introducing Lobo is just one way Krypton is having fun with the source material, Cuff said. While many film and TV adaptations of comic presents are colourful panels as overly serious, rain-soaked, foggy affairs, Cuff refuses to be embarrassed by Superman. It's a perspective he gleaned from Superman from Richard Donner's landmark 1978 film Superman the Movie. There are so many bits of wisdom from the production of that movie, he says. Richard Donner had a golden rule on set. We take the job seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. I think that's a great rule. This is Superman. There's meant to be a sense of awe and wonder. Christopher Reeve understood that inside and out. Despite decades of new Superman stories told since '78, Cuff argues the film has the greatest line in all of the Superman history. In that movie where Lois asks, "Who are you?" he says, "A friend." That's who he is. Superman has an unshakable image that is both helpful and hurtful. His convenient superpowers, his chiseled good looks, and his red and blue costume all sum up a character who's often thought of a less edgy and too vanilla compared to other superheroes. People think he's perfect, that he is the Boy Scout. That's not who he is, he says. Clark Kent is just a guy who can do incredible things and decides to be a superhero because it's the nice thing to do. He is aspiring to be Superman as much as anyone else. It is an ideal he strives towards. He doesn't always know the right thing, but he'll always do his best to make the right choice. That is such a human story. Wow. Cameron Cuffe. Thank you, my friend. That is fucking beautiful. And only someone who loves Superman and understands Superman can get that. And only people watching this, seeing me bawl like a fucking baby over a fictional character, can understand this. Because us Superman fans have been through so much shit since Superman the movie. We have. Because they keep on telling us that this is a boring, vanilla, overpowered character. But there's so much more to Superman than that. You know, don't you? You know. We had Superman the movie, we had Superman 2, Superman 3, Superman 4. We know the situation with Donna and the Salkinds after Superman the movie. That was the first thing that went wrong. He survives in the comics. Great comics, not so good comics. That's life. But in films and TV, we've had the Lois and Clark show, which I hated. I never watched the Superboy show. Smallville I loved Superman beforehand. But that show just brought out the love in the character. It was an amazing show. Then we got Superman Returns. Now, Superman Returns is a very interesting film. I think a lot of people have forgotten about Superman Returns. But there's more. I suppose, like Man of Steel, there's so many more people that appreciate it than you think. There was one guy just gleaming about it over on Twitter yesterday, and it was a beautiful thing, and I didn't realise the film was 13 years old. I remember how excited I was for Superman Returns. Bryan Singer had made 2 awesome X-Men movies, and I was so excited. And there's elements of Superman Returns that are beautiful. I was really excited that it was going to be continuing from Superman 2. The problem with that is Superman never mentions nothing much is mentioned about the past 2 movies. There's that moment when Richard White and Lois are talking about I spent the night with Superman article. But you don't feel this is the Superman that we saw in Superman and Superman 2. Now, what's interesting, Bryan Singer since has tried to blame Brandon Routh's performance. Brandon Routh was a very raw actor who'd only done soap operas. I think his performance as Clark and especially Superman were absolutely outstanding. There's that moment when he takes Lois for the flight of fantasy and they're floating and he goes, "Can you hear that?" She goes, "I can't hear anything." "I hear everything," he says. "You say the world doesn't need a saviour. I keep on hearing people crying out for one." That's what Superman does. No film has ever put that. What it's like to be Superman, to hear all these things. He hears everyone crying for his help. That's compelling. That's interesting. Because this character is compelling. And he is interesting. Don't let any fucker tell you that he's not relevant, that he doesn't matter, that he's too vanilla. Don't let people tell you that. Warner Brothers have got one of the most awesome, if not the awesome, epic, interesting characters on their books. And they're doing nothing with him. How does that make you feel as Superman fans? I don't care what's gone before. I don't know. I don't care that they messed the character up in Justice League. I don't care if some people hate Superman in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. Personally, I don't. But I understand. You're allowed to feel that way. But I don't care. You don't put Superman on the shelf and forget about him. Because he matters. He has been there for me every time I needed him. When Smallville was on and I was living in a bedsit, before my success, before I came to Cyprus and went on a reality show, right? When I was living in a bedsit and I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent, Smallville, Superman was there for me. I could watch Smallville. I could binge Smallville, and it was such a special show. And they respected who Superman was. Tom's performance as Clark Kent in Smallville is right on the money. That's what a young Clark Kent would be. And you look to him. And even as a teenager, you believe in him. He's still Superman. He doesn't wear the suit, but he saves people. He believes in people. And sometimes he gets lost. And sometimes he does the wrong thing. You see, they say Superman's not relatable. I was born in the UK. My parents were immigrants. When people looked at me when I went to school, they called me horrible racist names. I knew exactly how it felt to be Superman. Exactly. I didn't have fat powers. I couldn't fly. But that's part of it. You want his powers. You want to fly away. You want to do something. You want to be able to make a difference. That interview is so beautiful and sums up how I felt all my life. And this is why from the moment I saw the 1978 Superman the movie, I fell in love with this character. And as I say, to think right now, the other day I heard the news that Henry Cavill's going to play Sherlock Holmes with Millie Bobby Brown in the movie as a relative of him, or whatever it is, right? It's a female-led movie. She's going to lead it, but he's going to cameo as Sherlock Holmes. I was happy for Henry, but my heart sank because I know he's getting these roles. He's never going to play Superman again. There's no plans for Superman. So that news extremely pissed me off. I was very happy for Henry, but I was very upset for myself because I want to see awesome Superman movies. And the best Warner Brothers can offer is the S.H.I.E.L.D. and Shazam. What's going on? What's going on? How can you have such an awesome, epic character like Suits on your books and do nothing with him? Now, when we look at Superman Returns, there's a big connection to Man of Steel and what happened and why Zack did what he did. The complaint of Superman Returns, Lois Lane was too young. In Man of Steel, they said she was too old. Yup. In Superman Returns, they said there wasn't enough action. So Warner Brothers and Zack decided there had to be more action, and there was epic action. They said there was too much action for Man of Steel, so you can never win. So they said Spacey's Lex Luthor was this, this guy obsessed with, getting land and stuff. That's not Lex Luthor. So they made Lex Luthor from the New 52 in BVS. And the mainstream audience didn't like it. Well, what do you want? What do you want? Can there be a Superman film that pleases everyone? That's the question. Of course there can be. There can be a very special Superman film. I've spoken to you about my ideas. I've got another one, which I've thought about the other day. Superman could actually have an adventure in space, on a planet with a sun, where he's still got powers. He's got to save the world, or whatever. That world is dying. Maybe he brings them to Earth. Who knows? There are so many relevant Superman stories. But as something that no one's ever tried to do is make him the ultimate immigrant. Show, talk about that. Have the commentary of immigration in a Superman film. That's part of the character. Superman's personality needs to be amped up just a little bit, just to get people who are not into Superman interested in him. Of course he's relevant. Of course he's relatable. But us as creatives and writers and storytellers must make him creative. Must make him relatable. Sorry, losing my words from my passion and my emotion. It's our responsibility. Not the audience's, ours. There are many clever creatives out there who can give us amazing Superman TV shows with actually Superman in it. Wouldn't that be a quaint idea? An awesome Superman movie franchise, right? A Superman cinematic universe. It's all there for us. It's all there. Hollywood, Warner Brothers need to understand something. We need Superman. You can have as many female-led superhero films as you want. I couldn't give a flying fuck. But Superman is relevant, relatable, and he deserves a movie as soon as possible. And if you're not willing to do it, bring me on board as a consultant, and I'll help you.